Welcome to this week's version of. Hold on, let me stop. My homecoming. Homecoming just got to be thrown off. I can't even do my. Oh Lord have mercy. HBCU homecomings. I'm telling y'all, man, this is wow. Yes. Welcome to the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles. This week we're going to talk about the ABCs of development. It is my belief that that is the new frontier for the individual real estate investor. So let's talk about what a developer does and how you can make money doing ground up development.
Support for this program comes from the Digital Broadcasting Network, presenting podcasts and web series from everyday people who have an extraordinary passion to make the world a better place.
Hey, and welcome back to the Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles. I'm your host, Kevin Riles, and it's Kevin Riles and Friends, but for another week, it is me, myself, and I, the three of us, all in one, for this week's podcast, the ABCs of development. I want to apologize up front. I went to my school's homecoming this weekend, Morehouse College. Shout out to Morehouse College, Spelman College, and really all the Atlanta University Center schools. But as they say up in the tradition of the African American church, when there's a church picnic and they get up and report on the church picnic, they always say that there was a good time had by all. And so therefore, I will report to all of my podcast listeners that at my homecoming, there was truly a good time had by all, and especially me. So I am still recovering from that. So if my voice sounds a little scratchy or I drag a little bit, or if I say way more than I'm normal, just realize I'm about a day and a half from a good 36 hours of seeing friends and drinking water. Yeah, that's all I drank that weekend. It was water. So with that being said, my mom, I'm going to get a text about that. My mom is going to text me about that last comment. Wanted to talk this week about development. I get in fact, in homecoming, I had a lot of guys that wanted to talk about real estate investment. And by the way, if you're at homecoming or if you're at something like that, it's good to find out what people are doing, but they don't really want to talk about it like a lot because they're there to kind of have fun. So just FYI, do like, hey, let's exchange cards and talk next week when I'm in that mode, because I wasn't in the real estate mode. But anyway, I digress. I want to talk about development because I know in the Houston market and in talking to friends around the country, the inventory for investment property at a price that would allow for you to be able to make a profit is dwindling because there's so much competition for those properties, and there's so much capital that people want to deploy for a decent return. And even with the Dow hitting a 23,000 for the first time in its history, and so corporate profits are up and returns are better, people still like real estate, one, because of the fact that it produces income, return, you also get to depreciate it. So obviously, going back to my very first few podcasts, real estate is a great investment. But with inventories for investment properties being so low, what I'm having a problem with, even in my own business, is I have plenty of buyers that have capital to be able to deploy. What I don't have is enough inventory to sell them. I don't have enough inventory. As you know, I specialize in small income producing properties or multifamily properties, typically under 150 units, and then also what we call triple net properties that produce cap rates as well. And it's just been a difficult road to try to find in both on the market and off market deals for folks. And so I am truly a believer that we're in a time where if an individual investor in their market, and I'm going to speak to the Houston market, but I really do, after talking to folks, believe this is everywhere else, you really could develop your own product at a price point that would allow for you to be able to gain a much better return and have all of those same advantages of real estate investment. And so this week, I want to kind of give you a primer. This is what I teach at Prairie View A&M University, real estate development, real estate finance. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of a primer on how would you go about developing a property for business purposes, for income. And so a lot of times, people think that you have to have been in real estate for 1,000 years to be a developer, or you have to know some specialized knowledge to be a developer. But to be honest with you, you don't. I can take you to projects here in the Houston area where somebody literally just had an idea. They didn't have a degree in real estate. They didn't have a real estate license. They weren't an architect. They weren't a builder. They just had an idea, and therefore, and went on about trying to figure out how they could get that particular building built. And so what is a developer? Let's first talk that. The best way I can describe a developer is essentially they are a project manager, right? They're a project manager, and their project is to develop whatever the product type they're interested in, and whether that be multifamily or retail building. Even there are land developers, and land developers meaning that they will take raw land, get all the infrastructure there, and then try to entice some type of use on top of that. So there are all kinds of developers. So developers are essentially project managers, but they're project managers for a profit. They're project managers for a profit. And it's probably beyond the scope of this particular podcast to go into how developers form and the different types of legal structures you can do and how to raise money. We'll do that at another point. But at the same time, I think it's important that even for you individual folks out there, you can develop income producing property. So that's kind of what I'm going to focus on today, is you can develop income producing property. I am in the process of doing that myself. I think I've told you on previous podcasts that I have an interest in developing small multifamily properties here in the Houston area. So I've acquired 2 lots in the south part of Houston, and my plan, southeast part of Houston, my plan is to take those lots and develop 2 duplexes on either those lots, or a duplex per lot. And so I have now acquired the lots. I'm in the process of getting plans done and things of that nature. So I'm gonna go over that process here in a second. But one of the questions sometimes I get is, well, what do developers do other than being a project manager? Can you be more specific? So a developer acquires land. They identify market segments. They coordinate the team to help them get everything done. And that team includes the architect. It includes the financing folks. It includes the engineers to engineer the land. It includes the broker to sell the property or lease the property. And other folks. Sometimes you need traffic studies if you're doing commercial development. Sometimes you need surveys, so they get the surveyors. So again, a whole lot of people, and you're coordinating these events. They develop the program. They obtain what we call entitlements in the industry or permits. Sometimes in some of the municipalities that have zoning, a particular plot of land is not zoned for a particular use. So you might buy I'll give you an example. I did a fee development for a assisted living facility out in Sugar Land, which is a suburb of Houston. And that particular development was allowed on the land that we found. However, this was considered a special use. And so we had to go before the Planning and Zoning Commission and ultimately City Council out there to get this assisted living facility approved for that land use. And so that's called getting the land entitled. In other words, getting it licensed essentially for what you are trying to build. They manage the process. They approve the leasing and selling strategy. They oversee property management if it's a develop and hold situation. And then ultimately, we hope they earn a profit. Now, developers can earn a profit in many different ways. If you're an owner developer, which is what I'm going to focus on today, you're going to earn a profit by renting out whatever type of development you're developing. If you're a land owner developer that's doing land, then you're going to be selling pieces of that and hopefully earning a profit. There's also fee development, and that's what I've done in the past. Fee development is you hire me and pay me a fee, and I will take you through that process that I just went through. And so in that Sugar Land assisted living facility, that was what I was. I was a fee developer, so I earned a fee for my work. And so there's fee development. And then there's a combination of both, where you're the owner developer and you have investors that is developed with you, investment partners, and you get a fee. And so sometimes in that situation, your fee is a little reduced because you're now on the equity side. In other words, you're investing in it. But again, for the purposes of this particular podcast, I'm going to talk about a small owner developer where you own the property and you are also going to lease it out or sell it. And so with that being said, as far as the different types of development, I kind of went into that a little bit, but you can develop whatever suits your fancy, whatever the market is in need of, or what you're interested in. I think you should do a needs-based analysis first. Sometimes people say, oh, I really want to build a strip center. Well, would that be the highest and best use for that land or that location? Maybe it's something else. So there are developers that do residential development. One of the needs here in the Houston market, if you're one of my Houston listeners, and I just read an article, it's really nationwide, is affordable housing development. And when I say affordable, I don't mean houses that are, sticks and bricks and barely $1. I mean in the range of middle income. There's not a lot of middle income to lower middle income development going on, and so housing prices are going up. And so here in the Houston market, that kind of 150 to 180 market, and 150 and below, is a hot market if you can find inventory to be able to build that. And you can do one-offs. A lot of people think they have to develop a whole neighborhood, but they really don't. You can find a lot in an existing neighborhood and just do one of those properties and do pretty well. Usually your profit margin, from what I've been told on single-family development, is anywhere from 20 to 25%. So that's 20 to 30 grand, on a house is pretty decent. Imagine doing 10 of those over a year. That's $200,000 to $300,000 a year for you to be able to add to your income. There's multifamily development, which is our small multifamily development, land, office, retail. There's mixed use. Mixed use is typically some type of retail or office on the bottom and residential on the top, or sometimes it's it's not residential, it's office and industrial, or whatever the case may be. And then there's resort or hospitality, or building hotels. A couple of years ago, I went to the Marriott Development Conference for minority developers, and I know for a fact that Marriott is looking for development partners in and around the Texas area, but nationwide. And so there are all kinds of ways to get into the development game. And so if you are a small owner user, today I want to just talk about real quickly residential / small multifamily development and what you have to kind of be aware of in order to do that. And so I want to talk about kind of the stages of development. And this, again, is whether you're doing something small or large. But I'm going to take my own project as an example. Again, I plan on building 2 duplexes here in the Houston area. I really want to build 4plexes, by the way, but the Houston area code says that anything that goes above 3 units under the same roof line requires commercial grade code, which basically makes it economically unlikely that anybody would be able to build a 3 or 4plex. So in case I have some city government folks out there listening in Houston, we really need to change that rule to match the rest of the nation, where we can build high density small properties. But I digress. So if you have any connects, Kevin@KevinRiles.com, Kevin@KevinRiles.com, email me, let me know. So stages of development. First stage, feasibility, is what I am thinking about building feasible, right? And how do I determine that? Sometimes it's just a gut, right? Sometimes it's just a gut. I don't typically recommend that you just go on your gut, but sometimes it's just a gut. I used to be the kid that would drive down the street. It's like, man, it would be really cool if there was a McDonald's right there. And it was just a gut, because my gut would say there's no other fast food places in this area. I still do that, by the way. And that would just be a good location for a fast food place. But a gut can be wrong, and you can spend a whole lot of money on a gut. So one of the things you do to determine feasibility is you do kind of a market analysis. And by the way, market analysis does not have to be something very, very technical, especially if you're a small owner user. And like in my case, I want to build 2 duplexes. Market analysis might just be literally driving the area to see what other type of product. Are there any other duplexes? Are there any other rentals in the area? Is it a high rental area? What's the average rental rate? And making sure that you are building something that if you build it, they will come, but you kind of want them to come before you build it. In other words, you want them to kind of already be there, or want the market to be there before you build it. And you're meeting the market. You're not necessarily creating the market. I think, but when you become a larger developer, you can then be in the situation where you have the economics to be able to create a market. But I think when you're a smaller developer, you have to meet the market. I hope that makes sense. And then cost estimation during the feasibility. Okay, I want to build a duplex. Well, how much is that going to cost to build a duplex? And that's the part of where I am now, is I'm getting plans done so I can get those plans bid out to get the cost estimate of how much it's going to cost to build. I have a ballpark figure, and I've already done some other economic analysis to basically see what my return is going to be. And I've been very conservative, which is another advice if you're in the feasibility stage. If you're thinking it's going to cost X, you might want to do X times 1.5 to just be conservative as far as your numbers are concerned. So first stage of development is feasibility. Second stage of development is financing. Now that you have your cost estimates and you're pretty much sure that this is a product that will meet the market, how am I going to get it financed? All right, am I going to pay for it out of pocket? Am I going to go to a bank? What banks out there will allow for me to be able to finance this? What terms? Things of that nature. And so financing is important. Stage 3, and by the way, these stages don't necessarily go in this exact order. They can be running all at parallel, to be honest with you, because I'm doing site selection. And site selection is kind of determining where this particular property is going to be. Now, my site selection came first because I got an awesome deal on these 2 lots, and so therefore, my site was kind of selected for me because of the deal that I got on the lots. However, site selection is something important. So you can have an idea, and some people actually even go out and get plans done before they even know the site that they're going to build stuff on. And I understand that, and it does sometimes have to happen so you can have some sense of what you will build. But the issue with that is that what if the site that you find is perfect doesn't fit the plans that you have done? And so you just have to kind of manage that process. And then ultimately doing the design is another stage. So feasibility, financing, site selection, and then design. Are you designing a product? Because remember, at the end of the day, you're creating a product. Are you designing a product that will stand the test of time as far as use? If you're doing a retail center, does it have the right depth for the types of businesses that you want to attract? In my case, in my duplex case, am I designing a duplex that I think will fit the area? So for instance, if you're of the African-American tradition, driving through our neighborhoods, typically they're predominantly African-American, we like to sit outside on the porch or really in the front, not necessarily a porch, whether it's a porch or not. And so the duplexes that I'm getting designed have a front and back porch because I feel like that's important in the customer and dynamic where these particular lots are located in a predominantly African-American neighborhood, that people are going to want to sit outside and see what's going on. And so I think that's something that's custom for this particular duplex project that I'm doing, that I'm trying to meet where the market is. Again, that's kind of an example of having something designed. Now, I'm not building a Taj Mahal. I'm building rental grade units, but I also don't want to bastardize the community that I'm building in. And I'll say that as an aside, if you're going to do this, I think it's important that wherever you decide to have your sites, especially if it's residential construction, don't just build anything. Definitely build cost effective, but also make sure that you're not trying to just make a respectful profit as far as respectful to the neighborhood, and not just build something that is going to sit there and might make you money, but it's going to bastardize the community. So, and then ultimately it's marketing. So with my particular project, I have to consider, how I'm going to market these properties. What I plan to do is offer these properties, at least initially, to VHASH, which is the Veterans Housing Assistance Program. And it's a housing assistance program for veterans. So in our industry, we call that supportive housing. And so I want to kind of cater to veterans that are having difficulty in looking for or finding affordable rental housing. And so what my project is a for-profit version of what a lot of nonprofits are doing. But there's such a significant need for affordable rental housing in the Houston market. I just got back from Atlanta. Like I said, I was talking to someone in Atlanta. They said the same thing. I was talking to guys in D.C. They were saying the same thing. I was talking to guys in Chicago. They were saying the same thing. And so this is a nationwide issue. It's not just a Houston issue. And I think there's a significant opportunity out there for people to develop small multifamily and then also develop build to rent. Not everyone will buy a house. I know that's sacrilegious to say because our entire system of HUD and housing is built on home ownership, and our American dream is built on home ownership. But having been a practicing real estate broker for the last 20 years, I can tell you that not everybody's going to buy a house, and to be honest with you, not everybody should buy a house. And in this millennial generation, they are starting to realize that. That's why they're waiting a little longer to purchase homes. And so there's nothing wrong with that necessarily. I do know that most of our wealth, especially in minority communities, are built up in our equity. So I'm not advocating not buying a house, but there are times in life, especially when you're younger and maybe even when you're older, where leasing is probably the thing to do, in that you're transient, you're moving around, and then also if you're older, you don't have to worry about the maintenance as well. So there is a market for affordable, nice rental housing. I read an article a couple years ago about guys in Florida that were building 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 2-car garage homes for lease. They never had intention of selling them. They were like 1,400 square foot homes, nice fixtures, things of that nature, kind of rental grade, and they were doing very well with that. So again, that's another investment opportunity out there. If you cannot find a house to flip, then go build it. If you can't go find a house to flip, then go build it. So again, those stages of development: feasibility, financing, site selection, design, and marketing. So I want to encourage you guys out there, as the preacher would say in the church, as I come to a close. I want to make sure that you guys understand that if you cannot find the product that you need, as far as flips or renovations or things of that nature, just remember that you can develop it. You can build it. You can build it. And if you build it, they will come. All right. This is Kevin Riles with The Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles. I'll see you guys next week. If you have a question about anything that we've talked about on The Real Estate of Life with Kevin Riles, a real estate question or a life question, no matter what, email me at kevin@kevinriles.com. Again, that's kevin@kevinriles.com. I'll get it. I'll make sure that I respond to you via email, but also I want to kind of collect these answers so that I could help everyone else. So again, kevin@kevinriles.com.